Hey, it's Jen Therian here, and I'm going to train you how to make your own permanent jewelry connectors, charms, and gemstone chain. I've been wire wrapping for almost 19 years. I have included a workbook, which includes a list of tools and supplies that you need, and the ones that I personally love and use. The things to know when wire wrapping to enable a clean and long lasting wire wrap, and also the pros and cons to creating your own connectors versus purchasing them from suppliers. I personally adore gemstones, and my customers love the uniqueness of them because truly every gemstone is not like the other. The fact that they're genuine stones and that they're handmade brings a level of specialness to them as well. I hope you at least try this, as you might find that you love wire wrapping or you just want to create them for unique stones or beads that are specific to your brand, offering something that most are not. Have fun, and as always, feel free to reach out with any questions.
Hey, okay, let's get started. So here's all the tools and everything you need to make some connectors or rosary chain. You have your round nose, your flush cutters, and your flat nose. And of course, I have all these linked in the workbook for you. And then of course, your gemstone beads or beads, whatever you choose to use. 4mm, 3mm, and 2mm is what I typically use. 3mm seems to be the most popular when people are choosing their connectors. And you have your wire. You want to cut it. I like to batch it and cut a bunch of them all at once. That way it's saving on time, depending on how many connectors you're making. But I typically cut about 1 to 1.5 inches, depending on how many beads I'm putting on. You're going to want to perfect this over time so you're eliminating some waste. But you want to grab your piece of wire and your round nose. And I leave a little tail about maybe 1/2 inch, flip it down away from me at 90 degrees, and then turn it back towards me over that circle to create a full circle there, as you can see, a full loop. And then take it away from your flat nose, clamp it down with your flat nose to steady it, and then you want to turn that wire and wrap it twice to flip towards the back again. So you're doing 2 full wraps. And then you're using your flush cutters and using the flat side of your flush cutters to cut as close as you can to the base. And you're going to have, of course, a little tail that sticks up once you cut. So you want to take your flat nose, and which I love these flat nose because they have some grip to them, and you're going to flatten that down so there is, and feel it so there is no, nothing sticking up, because that's the worst case, is that over time it can unwrap or it can catch on someone's clothing if you don't have that down and flat and flush. So you want to string your beads, however many you're doing. For the sake of this video, I'm making a few connectors for you. I'm going to make a rosary chain, connect them to each other to create like a gemstone chain. But of course, you can just do them single for connectors. So once you have your beads on, you're going to again flip it down away from you, with doing 90 degrees. Take your round nose and just put it beyond where you have it folded down. Flip it again towards you, same process. And then take it away, clamp it down to steady it, and wrap it around 2 times away from you. Some people use a tool to wrap it around. I find it easiest with my fingers. I've seen it done where people grab the flat nose and they use it to twist around with the flat nose, if that makes sense, rather than your fingers. But I find that's just one extra step. So then you take your flat nose, and again, you're going to flatten it. But what you want to be aware of this time is that you have a gemstone next to it. So you don't want to grab or kind of get your gemstone in the pliers and break your gemstone. I've done that many times, especially with very small gemstones like 2mm. It can be a little bit easier to do. Okay, so let's do another connector. Let's do it again. For the sake of this video, FYI, I'm using 26 gauge wire. I am starting to use 24 gauge when it comes to making connectors, because as you might know, if you've ever worked with these with permanent jewelry, this wire is pretty, of course, thin, delicate, and through any wire, if you bend it back and forth, it becomes weak and breaks. Gold is definitely harder than sterling silver. So I would say you can going up to 22 gauge. It still looks okay, but for me, I don't love the look of 22 gauge when it comes to a connector, especially when we're connecting it to really delicate chains. So I stick to 24 gauge, I think is the thickest I would go personally. But again, that's all up to you and something that you can play around with. So this time I'm stringing 2 beads on, and what I'm doing is that second loop, I am putting it through my connector of the first connector because I'm creating a little rosary chain, right? So that's something just to know if you wanted to make a gemstone chain and play around with different beads and different stones. It'd be really fun. So same concept again. These are all the same steps, just making sure to clamp that down, being aware of the beads so you don't crush it. And there you go. So you got like a little link getting started here. Another thing to note with the why I'm choosing and why I have this specific, I know there's a lot of round nose out there, but I like to create my loops as little as possible. Honestly, of course, as you're using jump rings for permanent jewelry, of course, I want a 24 gauge to be able to go through it for sure. And possibly sometimes I make them so tiny that a 26 gauge goes through, but I really want to make it so the 24 gauge can go through. But for me, I'm really kind of particular about my connectors looking seamless with the chain. I do not want it to be obvious. I don't want a big loop, especially if it's being attached to a delicate chain. I think that looks so obvious. And I can be a little bit, I guess, again, particular, and that's my opinion, but that's why I love these round nose. I've been making this kind of jewelry, wire wrapping, for a very long time. And I did not even know that these existed, the round nose with the super, super tiny barrel that enables you to make really tiny loops. So I actually just found this about a year ago, and I feel like it's a game changer for me. So I'm able to create that really tiny and seamless look into a bracelet. And that's my goal. So that's why I choose these round nose and why I have them linked for you, because I truly believe they're amazing. These flush cutters, I've had so many cutters in the past I've had to sharpen, or they just really don't last very long and don't stay sharp. And these are pretty amazing. And I've had them for a while. So just giving you a little heads up about the tools. And then the flat nose, you're probably familiar with these if you use Sunstone products. It's actually their grounding pliers. This is exactly the grounding plier that they have from Sunstone. And I love these pliers because of the grip and just the size of the tip. So again, these seem to work the best for this as well. So, okay, so I did a 3, 2, 1 with the beads to create a little rosary train. And now we're going to get into if you want to create a charm. So you want it to hang versus have a connector and have two ends, right? So you are going to get a head pin. They're called head pins. The one I'm using is really thick. This is just what I had around. So this is what I'm showing you. But also I'm going to showing you with this thick wire, because I believe this is 18 gauge, how it creates a loop and the wrap looks so different. And that's what's going to happen when you have a thicker wire versus thin. Okay, so you're doing the same process. Obviously making that loop, coming towards me, and then wrapping it around. But it's definitely, I don't know if you can tell from the video, it's definitely harder to manage with the thicker wire. I want to say this again, this might be 18 or even 16 gauge wire. It's really thick. And then I'm wrapping it around. And these again will hang, which, from and not be connectors, which aren't as popular for me for sure. But there are people that love the charms for sure. So again, if you can see my wrap right there, it looks so bulky to me, and pressing it down for sure, because this wire is so thick. So you want to make sure, especially because charms hang, you really want to make sure that tail is tucked in and flush and not going to catch anything or get unwrapped over time. So it's not going to stick up and catch on people's clothing. I definitely had that happen to somebody, I'm not going to lie. So I'm really, really aware of that now. So it creates a different wrap look, which you might like too. I like that look, but it just being aware of that, the wire is more obvious and the tail is more obvious, when you're tucking that in and where the end is. And there you go. That is wire wrapping. If you have any questions, reach out.